Thank you for joining the January 2021 VMware TAM customer webinar. This webinar is organized by the VMware TAM organization to provide our customers the opportunity to hear great content and interact directly with great speakers that are delivering it, with the goal of making sure that you are getting full benefit from your software. Please make sure to use the Q&A feature to ask any questions, and if your question doesn't get addressed today for some reason, be sure to reach out to your TAM, ask them to follow up for you. Before we get into today's content, just a couple of basic announcements. The first is that our next TAM customer webinar will be on February 18th. We'll have the privilege of learning about one of the newer VMware solutions, the VMware Cloud Data Recovery offering. As I mentioned earlier, we want you to benefit from these sessions by interacting with the speaker. So if you have any questions, please use that Q&A feature and we'll address them probably at the end of the webinar today. And lastly, this webinar is being recorded and your TAM can make the recording link available to you. After a few months, that recording link does become publicly available on the VMware TAM Services YouTube channel. So that brings us to today's speakers and topic. For the past couple of years now, my customers and I have really benefited by the VMware on VMware program, where VMware employees that deploy and operate the VMware solutions internally share their experiences with our customers. Today, we're joined by Swapnil and Preeti, who are going to share their experience in migrating to the NSX Advanced Load Balancers, which have come from the Avi acquisition a couple of years ago. Thanks all of you for attending, and Swapnil and Preeti, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Swapnil Hendre. I'm a Director of Solutions Engineering and Design at VMware. I've been with VMware for about 10 years, and my team is responsible for leading solutions architecture from inception to go live. And one of the projects which we have been working on for last close to year and a half is migration to NSX Advanced Load Balancer. For today's session, I'm joined by my colleague, Preeti. Preeti, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, Swapnil. Hi, everybody, and thank you for viewing this session. I'm Preeti, and I work as Lead Solutions Engineer in VMware India. Through my role, I've worked on projects such as NSX Advanced Load Balancer deployment and implementation across IT, NSXT deployments, as well as VMware Cloud on AWS. I'm excited to meet with all of you, and I hope you like the session that we've planned out for you.
Okay, thank you, Preeti. So the load balancer landscape is changing quite rapidly. And at VMware, we have been on a journey to migrate from our legacy load balancers to NSX Advanced Load Balancers, formerly known as the Avi networks. And to meet the business requirement, we have put together a high-level plan for getting from legacy load balancer to NSX Advanced Load Balancer. We would like to share the journey with you, and we will go from there. So let's start with the high-level agenda. So first, we will discuss why we chose NSX Advanced Load Balancer. Next, we will talk about where did we start, because generally, like starting the production deployment is very critical, and we will outline the process we use to ensure that we do the seamless migration from our legacy load balancer. Next, we have a short demo for you where we will kind of show you how we are using NSX Advanced Load Balancers analytics feature to provide the day-to-day or day-to operations. Next, we'll quickly talk about the VMware IT journey, like where we started, where we are right now, and where we are going. And finally, we will save some time for the Q&A at the end of the session. So let's start with why NSX Advanced Load Balancer. So at VMware IT, what we generally do is we continuously evaluate our technologies that we deploy in our production. We continuously work with our business, looking at the ever-changing requirements, and we also look at the existing pain points. Before we started with NSX Advanced Load Balancers, so last few years, we were facing several challenges with our existing load balancer infrastructure. So let's zero in on some of these challenges. The first one is the root cause analysis. Right? For those who support the load balancers on day-to-day basis, they know that Generally, the load balancers are entry point to most of your applications. So anytime any application has any service disruption or any degradation, the first thing everyone wants to look at is the load balancer. With our legacy load balancer, the challenge we are facing is the RCA or root cause analysis simply took too long. The main reason behind that is with our legacy load balancer, we didn't have a lot of historical data. And anytime we want to troubleshoot the issue, we had to go ahead and enable the additional logging, do the packet capture, analyze the data. And we couldn't really do the real-time troubleshooting without doing the additional logging. And a lot of times, if there is a service disruption which is happening or service degradation, the additional logging actually results into putting more load on the load balancer. The next is the lack of elasticity. So generally, in the past, when we were deploying the load balancers, we had to do the capacity planning for 3 to 5 years because a lot of the existing load balancers in the past we had, those were physical. Now that comes up with like the two challenges, right? The first challenge is that you need to be able to anticipate your needs for next 3 to 5 years, which is very hard because nowadays the business requirements change very often. So that's the first challenge. And the second challenge, which kind of a kind of byproduct of the first one, is a lot of time our the engineers would end up over provisioning to ensure that we don't really have any performance issues or capacity issues, given those were physical load balancers. Now, we did a recent review before we started this project across all our legacy load balancers, and we realized that most of our load balancers were not even used 20%. And it's no fault of anyone's, but given that the lack of elasticity, we had come into this problem. The next one is in VMware, we are on a journey to migrate our applications to the public cloud. And we wanted to ensure that we have a unified load balancing platform, which will allow us to manage and maintain the load balancing landscape from on-prem and the public cloud, which lacked with our legacy load balancer. And finally, we are also on a journey to migrate from our monolithic applications to the cloud native applications. So we needed out-of-box support for our cloud native applications, which we are deploying using Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, which was lacking as well. When we looked at all these challenges, we looked at the NSX Advanced Load Balancer and realized that most of these challenges can be addressed out of the box. Let's go through them one by one, right? The first one is the ease of deployment. Given the 100% virtual nature of NSX Advanced Load Balancer, we were able to deploy this load balancer quite easily. And also it provides a native integration with the vSphere. So you can integrate with this load balancer with vSphere, and you can easily scale your load balancer elastically on the fly. So you can do horizontal scaling without any issues. The next thing is analytics, which is kind of one of the most critical feature that we realize while doing this evaluation of NSX Advanced Load Balancer. And I'm going to go through in more detail, but at very high level, the analytics feature provides us the deep insights into our application traffic without really enabling additional logging or additional packet capture and so on. The next thing is the automation. Since NSX Advanced Load Balancer has out-of-box integration with our vSphere, we were able to scale and automatically deploy the load balancer depending on the business requirements. We also have integration with NSX Advanced Load Balancer and Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, which allowed us to automate the entire load balancing configuration with pretty much a zero-touch provisioning. So we'll talk about that in more detail when we start going through the various use cases. And finally, the public cloud deployment. as I mentioned, we wanted to have a load balancer which provides us the unified management from on-prem and public cloud. With NSX Advanced Load Balancer, we were able to do so because you can have the your controller plane manage the on-prem and the public cloud. Now let's quickly talk about that very high level, the analytics features with NSX Advanced Load Balancer. The first thing you'll notice in this architecture, one of the advantages we have is the data plane and the control plane is separated. With our legacy load balancer, we had like several load balancer pairs in one of the data center. One of the challenge which we had was we couldn't really correlate the application traffic patterns because those load balancers were separate. So let's take an example. In our one of our data center, we had like, let's say 6 pairs of load balancer. If we want to do any analysis, we have to log into each and every load balancer separately. With NSX Advanced Load Balancer, on the other hand, since the control plane and data plane is separated, you can add all your load balancer pairs to existing controller, which allows you to manage and maintain and also correlate your traffic patterns. If you look at it from the bottom up, we have a support for bare metal, virtualized and containers on-prem, and as well as we have a support on public cloud as well. With the analytics, one of the challenges we always had is anytime there is a service disruption, we don't really know where to start, right? Generally, when you identify the root cause, the solving the problem doesn't take too long. So these features of the advanced analytics allow us to trace the transaction end to end. So for example, if one of our the business partners comment saying that, hey, we have a service disruption, we simply ask them for the virtual service name, and then we can analyze these transactions and see what is the client round trip time, server round trip time, the application response time, and which helps us pinpoint the problem. We also have a ability to do the historical searches in the logs for specific application traffic. So we can look at the SL version, TLS version 1, or checkout.php. Also, we have an ability to do the DDoS protection or the web application firewall, which helps us protect from any attacks. Now that we have gone through the overall why we started with NSX Advanced Load Balancer and the high-level review of the advanced analytics, I would like to request Preeti to do a low level or the kind of a deep dive into the NSX Advanced Load Balancer architecture.
Thank you, Swapnil. So now that we have a basic overview of how NSX Advanced Load Balancer works, let us take a look at the logical topology and how the components are, how they fit together and what they are, etc. So this diagram here, it shows you all the logical components of the NSX Advanced Load Balancer. Let's discuss them one by one briefly. So the first component we're going to take a look at is the controller cluster. Like Swapnil mentioned earlier, one of the many benefits of NSX Advanced Load Balancer is the separation of control plane from the data plane. Controller cluster is the control plane portion of the load balancer, and it acts as the brain of the load balancer, and it gives out instructions to all the other entities which they execute. So controller cluster is usually also the central management UI point via which you can access the other components. So for high availability, there is always a recommendation to cluster the controllers, and the perfect recommended model is 3 controllers, and that is what you see in this picture as well. We have 3 controllers in one cluster. So the next component we're going to take a look at is service engines. Service engines is the data plane portion of the load balancer, and service engines are the worker nodes which take care of the actual transactions from the VIP to the pool and the client transactions to VIP, etc. So service engines, they talk to the VIPs, and they do transfer of not only data traffic but also the health monitor traffic. Similar to controllers, data service engines are also clustered or rather grouped. In this picture, you can see 4 service engines, which are a part of a service engine group, which is also referred to as SEG. Next, let's take a look at cloud. So in NSX Advanced Load Balancer, multiple environments can be created within the same load balancer, and each of these environments is called a cloud. So how it is designed is that you can have one cloud for an environment within which all the other components of that environment will be contained, like the service engines, the related VIPs, etc. Everything will go inside that particular cloud. So in our infrastructure, how it is designed is, suppose we have a production infrastructure, we have a prod cloud for that, and a pair of service engines, a service engine group, all for production, as well as all the production VIPs, pools, and all the concerning profiles. Everything would go into the production cloud only. If there is a staging environment, that will have a separate cloud altogether. Some other components in the load balancer, as you can see, are VRFs, which stands for virtual routing and forwarding. Then there are VIPs or virtual services. And then there are pools which contain the pool members or the backend servers. The last component that we're going to take a look at is tenants. So tenant in NSX Advanced Load Balancer is an isolated instance. So what purpose it serves is that each user who has access to the load balancer is mapped to a particular tenant. And what tenant they are mapped to is what decides what view they get as soon as they log into the load balancer, or what all components they can view. So these are all the high level components in the NSX Advanced Load Balancer. Now that we've taken a look at this, I would like to take you through some screenshots that we've captured from one of our live load balancer instances, which go through very important portions of the load balancer. So this is the first screenshot that we're taking a look at, and this is called the dashboard view. And this is what you will see as soon as you log into the NSX ALB and switch to the right tenant. So here, as you can see, all the virtual services in that particular tenant are listed. This is called a VS tree view. So over here, if you expand any particular VIP, you will also see all the other portions that are attached to the VIP, like the pool, as well as the pool members and the SC, etc. What I would like you to concentrate on over here mainly is something known as the health score. And where you can see this is right to the left of the VIP name, you can see a number within a circle. So this is what is called the health score in NSX Advanced Load Balancer. And this is calculated based on something known as the analytics profile. Now, the analytics profile is a custom profile that you can set up to define the health of this application at its optimum state. So there are various parameters that go into calculating the health score, and to view that, you can just hover over the health score like we've done in this screenshot, and it'll show you what all values are incorporated inside this. For example, there's performance, and if there's any resource shortage or any anomalies or any security issues, etc. And basically the health is the highest health score a virtual service can have is 100, which means that the virtual service is running perfectly. There are no issues with it at all. And the lowest is 0, which probably means that the VIP is completely down, like the second VIP that you can see over here. There are also some intermediate scores, and how exactly to interpret them and understand why that score is being reported is something that we'll see during the demonstration that will come later on. So in this screen, what you can see is transaction logs. This is again a very useful feature when in times of troubleshooting or during a downtime or an outage scenario. So what you can see in the left side image is one transaction log which has been expanded. So all of this information is collected real time as soon as the transaction hits the load balancer. So let's take a deeper look into this image and see what all information we can get out of this transaction. So let's go from the top. First, we see client RTT, server RTT, app response time, data transfer rate, etc. Then in the leftmost pane, you get a lot of client-specific analytics. Like there is a client IP and the port. There's the location from which this client request is originating. There is the operating system, the device, the browser, etc. And in the middle pane, the first thing you see is the virtual service IP, which is the IP of the VIP. Then you have the server connection IP. This is nothing but the data interface of the service engine, which is handling this particular transaction. So from the service engine, this request is handed over to the server, backend server. Then you have a couple of request information, response information, etc. And there is also an option to view the headers that have been exchanged as a part of this transaction. One important thing that you want to pay attention to over here is the middle pane last parameter, which is significance. So significance is basically very helpful when you want to perform reverse engineering during downtime or outage scenario. So let's imagine a situation where you know what the issue is, and that the issue is, say, supposedly the request got terminated abnormally. So, but you don't know what exactly caused that. So in this time, what you can do is you can simply come to the significance, which is request terminated abnormally, and check all the transactions that got terminated because of that issue. And you can, it'll just make it very easy to pinpoint which transaction went bad. So this is about the actual information that you get from the transactions. In the right image, what you can see is how not only do you get this information, you can also filter through this information. So you can put a filter saying client location is internal, and if you do that, all the specific traffic will load. This is just a good way to fine tune your traffic to get to the transaction that you want to take a look at. Next, what we're going to see is the security tab of the virtual service. So this tab is where you see all information about the security specific parameters of the virtual service. So let's go pane by pane. The first pane is SSL, and here you see pie charts of certificate as well as SSL TLS version. So this is all the information collected from the VIP, where you can get details like how's your certificate looking, are your ciphers okay, or are they going to be deprecated, as well as what SSL TLS versions are there. Right below that, you have SSL score. So SSL score for each VIP is calculated based on various parameters, which is listed right below. The highest score you can have is 5 points, but if there is any parameter lacking, the score will be adjusted accordingly. In this screenshot, you can see that due to SSL protocol strength, the score has been reduced to 3.5. In the right pane, what you can see is DDoS, and this is the place where you have to look into to know if your VIP is going through any attack at that given point in time. So if it is, then you will get information such as L4 versus L7 attacks, or the duration of the attack, how many connections have been blocked, etc. And all this information is also plotted in the form of a graph as shown there. So in summary, these screenshots allow us to troubleshoot more effectively whenever we have outage scenario. So in case there is an issue with a particular VIP, what we first do is check the health score of the VIP to get a quick view of what exactly is happening there. Is there any service degradation, etc. Right after that, we analyze the transaction logs and filter through using either the client IP or the significance to check exactly what the root cause may be. And finally, we check the security tab to make sure that the virtual service is not under any sort of attack.
Thank you, Preeti, for taking us through that low-level review. And you'll see more of what Preeti was talking about when she goes through the kind of a demo for how we kind of do the analytics in one of our live environments. Okay, so let's start with VMware IT's use cases, right? So I want to share where we start. And as I was saying before, where to start is one of the kind of a hardest question all of us face when we are deploying a new technology or new solution. At VMware IT, where we have very well defined process when it comes to deploying a new technology or new solution. It always starts with a specific process that we have been using for years now, and I want to share that with you. The step one is to work with your business, identify the business requirements. Based on the business requirements, we build a success criteria. Like what do we call it, or how do we measure the success of the project? Then we put together the test cases and use cases for to meet those success criteria. Once that is done, we review these kind of a high-level design with our stakeholders. And once we get the approval, then the next step, we generally start with a proof of concept where we validate our design, followed by the production pilot, where we choose a slightly less critical production site and do the rollout. And once that is done, then we finalize a global rollout plan. When we started with NSX Advanced Load Balancer, we followed the exact same process. But given that the critical nature and complex nature of this project, we split the project into 4 use cases. And I'll go through each of them one by one. The first use case was NSX Advanced Load Balancer migration for our remote sites. We have several remote sites where we have been using our legacy load balancer to manage several small services deployed in those remote sites. So generally, the remote site deployment is considered quite simple as compared to the other deployments we have. So we wanted to start with a simple deployment. All these remote sites have about 20-25 virtual services. So we wanted to get our feet wet, start with this deployment. And this was one of our brownfield deployments. Now, what I mean by brownfield is deployment is that your application is already live in this site and you are doing a live migration. The next 2 deployments were the greenfield deployments. As I mentioned before, we were in the process of migrating a lot of our applications to public cloud, which is VMware Cloud on AWS. And we wanted to start with that greenfield deployment using NSX Advanced Load Balancer, followed by cloud native deployment, where we used NSX Advanced Load Balancer to integrate with Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. And finally, this is our most critical deployment, which is a data center migration. Just to share like a high level scope for this data center migration, and the reason we left it at the end is because we have more than 4,400 virtual services, more than 1,200 monitors, and more than 800 plus custom scripts, which are used to modify the traffic flows based on the business requirements. So we started targeting these use cases in this order, and I'm going to go through the approach we took to do these migrations. So one of the first kind of principle of any deployment we do in our environment is we want to ensure that the deployment is seamless. We should have a rollback plan in case something goes wrong. And we want to ensure that there is a very minimal business impact. Keeping in line with those, what we did for this approach is we deployed a controller cluster in EMEA for our controller plane. Then we deployed our load balancers in this EMEA location. Now, to ensure that we do a seamless migration and the quick cutover, what we did is we pre-stage all the config using the automation scripts. So we used the automation scripts provided by NSX Advanced Load Balancer team, which allowed us to take the configuration from our legacy load balancer and convert that into the Ansible format, which we imported into our NSX Advanced Load Balancer. Now at this point, no migration is done, but we have pre-staged all the data. Now, since we have pre-staged all the data, at this point, we worked with our business owners and we scheduled a maintenance window. We generally request for 1 hour maintenance window for these kind of changes, but our goal is to ensure that our actual service impact is very, very low. To ensure we able to do that, we wrote the scripts to do the cutover. The script, we wrote 2 scripts. The first one is to disable the incoming traffic to the legacy load balancer and enable the incoming traffic on the NSX Advanced Load Balancer. By doing so, we were able to quickly cut over the traffic from legacy load balancer to NSX Advanced Load Balancer. The way we did is by just enabling or disabling the ARP on the legacy load balancer and enabling the ARP on the NSX Advanced Load Balancer. Once that was done, we completed our functional testing and our QA sign-off. Once that is done, we decommissioned the config on our legacy load balancer, and then we kept the legacy load balancer in place for 3 weeks. And after 3 weeks, we decommission our legacy load balancer as well. As I mentioned, we had our rollback script ready. Fortunately, we didn't have to use that, but you should always be ready in case something goes wrong. And the same process was followed by the second site in EMEA, where we pre-staged the config, did the cutover, and decommissioned the NSX advanced load balancer, legacy load balancer. So this was kind of the process we followed. Now, this is kind of our logical topology for our load balancers for the remote sites across the 3 regions. Now, you might wonder, why are we having 3 different controller clusters? So we wanted to ensure that we adhere to the recommendations provided by our NSX Advanced Load Balancer, the product team. And the recommendation is that the latency between the controllers and the service engines, which are kind of the worker nodes or the actual load balancer, should not be more than 55 milliseconds. Staying in line with that, we deployed 3 different controller clusters to ensure that we don't have any supportability issues. So that's our recommendation, to ensure that you have a control cluster in each region. But again, your business requirement might be different, but this worked out for us. The next deployment is the VMware Cloud on AWS deployment. Just a brief backstory around this deployment. We had recently acquired 2 companies at the time this request came up. One of the acquisition was Pivotal and the other one was Carbon Black. And we were requested to deploy Horizon desktops so that we can onboard our colleagues from these acquisitions. Generally, these kind of deployments, if done in traditional sense, could take up to 3 months, because you would have to first procure the hardware, get the funding, deploy the hardware, then deploy Horizon on it, then use the load balancer, then do the configuration. So it takes 3 to 4 months. But using VMware Cloud on AWS, we were able to have the capacity available on demand, and we were able to complete this deployment in less than 3 weeks. And there is a blog we have written on this one if you are interested to know more about this. And we use NSX Advanced Load Balancer inside public cloud, which allowed us to load balance the Horizon desktops in public cloud. And this environment was used by our colleagues post this deployment. The next example we have for VMware Cloud on AWS is our authentications application. So VMware authentication application is one of the most critical application. The reason behind that is it's used by all of our customers. So all of our customers use this application to authenticate and use various VMware products. With our business, we had a requirement to provide 4 nines of SLA for this application. To meet this SLA, we decided to deploy VMware authentication application on VMware Cloud on AWS, which allowed us to meet this criteria of 4 nines. Now, how did we meet this criteria? We met this criteria by using GSLB, or Global Service Load Balancer, which allowed us to distribute the requests from our customers between these 3 sites. So even if one of the site goes down, the other 2 sites can take care of the traffic inflow. It allowed us to meet these requirements of 4 nines, and we were able to use the NSX Advanced Load Balancer to do this unified deployment, the one we talked about at the beginning, which allowed us to manage and maintain the load balancing infrastructure on-prem and the public cloud in the same way. Again, this is also a logical architecture of the deployment. We have 3 controller clusters here based on our requirements to support the various load balancers in various regions in public cloud. We deployed this. Now let's talk about the next deployment, which is the deployment to support our cloud native deployment. So in this scenario, this is kind of a high level topology of this container deployment. As you can see here, we have the deployment of the applications. We have deployed them on the Tanzu Kubernetes grid, and you have a primary and standby site. And we use the NSX Advanced Load Balancer as an ingress. Now, what I mean by that is, in the past, anytime we were supposed to do any deployment with the load balancer, the application team would have to submit a ticket. Then the operations team would look at that ticket and they would go ahead, configure the virtual service. In case something goes wrong, they will troubleshoot with the application team. There was so much time lost in this process, and it was a very repetitive manual process. We wanted to get rid of this process completely and give full control to our application teams. By using NSX Advanced Load Balancer integration with the Ingress virtual services, this process was quite simple. We first integrated the NSX Advanced Load Balancer with Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. We created a pool of the IPs, which will be used by virtual services. And anytime the application team needs a virtual service or update the virtual service, they would simply run a script which will automatically contact NSX Advanced Load Balancer, and it will configure the virtual services. When they are done with their deployment, they also had ability to dismantle the application along with virtual services. This saved us a significant amount of time, which we used to spend in the past when we integrated applications with the legacy load balancer. Just quickly want to take a look at the high level architecture of this deployment. Similar to the other GSLB use case, we wanted to ensure that anytime there is a maintenance on application, let's say if it is the planned maintenance or unplanned maintenance, we have ability to switch the traffic between two data centers. So in this case, that is achieved by using GSLB. GSLB would look at the status of the virtual services in both of the data centers. If the status is up, it would send the traffic to that data center. In the maintenance, in the event of maintenance, we would generally do the maintenance on our standby site first. Once the maintenance is complete, we'll flip the switch and the traffic will get routed from the second data center. And then we'll go back and do the deployment data center one. So again, at very high level, this is our logical topology for the NSX Advanced Load Balancer integration with the Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. Finally, last but not the least, our data center migration. Just wanted to share our experience and a few of the recommendations. When we looked at the data center migration, there were two options we are considering. The first option was like a big bang approach where we just migrate all the configuration from legacy load balancer to NSX Advanced Load Balancer, do the testing and do one giant maintenance window. And the second approach was do the migration of one application at a time. When we looked at the overall scale and the overall deployment, we realized that it will be very risky to do the big bang approach. So we started doing this deployment in kind of a phase manner. We deployed the controller cluster similar to the remote site deployment. We deployed this service engines. Then we stage here one application whips at a time. So we, instead of doing all the virtual services, we stage one application at a time. Then we went ahead, did the cutover by disabling the ARP on the application on legacy side and the enabling the ARP for the virtual services on the NSX Advanced Load Balancer. Then we decommissioned that application from legacy load balancer, and then we continued this process. By doing so, we were able to do this deployment without really having any service disruption for our applications. And this is the safe approach that we took. And based on your business requirements, you might want to consider one of these approaches, or the hybrid approach would work as well. So this is kind of our logical topology of our various controller clusters. So when I say NASA, that stands for North America, South America data center. And we have, this is obviously a logical topology. This is not how our real data center deployment looks like. It's far larger deployment than what I'm showing here. But that's the process that we use. Now that we have gone through the use cases, I would like to request Preeti to take us through a quick demo for the NSX Advanced Load Balancer analytics.
Thank you, Swapnil. So what we're going to see here is a very brief demo, and what we're going to concentrate here is mainly how health health profiles as well as analytics helps you to pinpoint and resolve issues immediately. So this is how it looks when you log into the NSX ALB initially. The first step that you have to do is to switch to the right tenant. Wherever you see admin, if you click on that, you will get the list of all available tenants in this controller, and you can just select one of them to be shifted into that tenant. So for this demo, we're using DTLT1. As soon as you switch into the tenant, you'll see all the virtual services in that particular tenant are listed as given here. And not only are they listed, but they're also color coded according to their health score. This we saw a little bit before, but health score helps us to accurately determine the overall status of each of the virtual service immediately. So the colors go from green to yellow. Yellow means that it is degraded a little bit, but not much. But orange means that it's significantly degraded, and there are also red VIPs, which means that the VIP itself is down. There are also gray color VIPs, which just means that the VIP has been manually disabled by the administrator. They can be cleaned up during the housekeeping task. So let's look at this view. It helps us to very easily pinpoint if there are any issues going on with each of the VIPs at a glance itself. So in a real case scenario, suppose the application team has to approach us and be like, we can't access our Boomi service. So as soon as we log into the load balancer, we can see that the Boomi VIP itself is down. And the reason why it's down, if we hover over the exclamation point, we can see that the pools are down. So we can immediately reply to the application team saying that, please check your servers, looks like they are down, and that is why the VIP is not servicing. So the analysis is that easy. It stops right there with these VIPs. With the VIPs that are yellow, we need to further analyze to understand as to why such a score has been given to them. And for that purpose, let us go into the VS tree view from the VS list view. So the VS tree view is very similar to list. Even here, there is a collection of all the VIPs, but the difference is that you can click on any one of the VIPs and see all the attached components like the pool members, the SC that is hosting this VIP, etc. So in this particular use case, you see that the pool is 100, the pool members SC, all of them have been given the best health score possible, but still the VIP is lacking. So to understand why the VIP is still not been given a good health score, we can again go and hover on the health score. And here you see all the parameters that it is ranked against. So over here, performance is 100 for this VIP, but there has been a security penalty of 20 points that have been imposed, which has brought down the score to 80 points. So to understand why exactly this has been imposed, we can click on View Health. This will redirect us to the Health tab of the virtual service. Here again, you can see the same split 100 for performance and 20 for security threat. Let's click on security threat to understand more about this reduction. So there are two, and let's click on the highlighted branch, which is SSL score data. Now here you see all the parameters against which SSL score is measured. Again, the highlighted branch is HSTS enabled. Now this property is missing, because of which the 20-point reduction has happened from the overall score of the VIP. So this way you can understand exactly why your VIP is lacking in its health score. And this information can also be checked in the security tab of the VIP. So we took a brief look of this in our screenshots. The SSL score, perfect score is 5, but that score has not been given to this VIP simply because of the same parameter, which is HSTS enabled, and that is set to false. So this VIP has only gotten 4 as a score. So while we're here, let's also take a look at the transaction logs. So we're shifting to past year to have a larger subset of data to go through. Okay, first off, there are two types of logs in NSX ALB. One is significant logs and the other is non-significant logs. Non-significant logs is something that you basically enable whenever you want to perform any troubleshooting, because that will capture all the intricate log statements that are hitting your VIP. So once you enable that, you see that all the transactional logs that have been seen by this VIP are loading over here. So not only can you see all these logs, like we saw before, you can also expand and view more details about them. Let's go ahead and do that. So this, when you expand it, all of this is real-time data that you get. You see the client IP, client port, the location is internal over here because this is an internal VIP. If it is an external VIP, you'll see the actual geographical location. Then we have the operating system, the device, the browser, etc., and many other client statistics over here. Then in the middle pane, you see the virtual service IP, the server connection IP, which is the service engine's data interface IP. And from the service engine, it is handed over to the backend server or the pool member of this particular VIP, which is going to actually handle that transaction. Apart from this, you also see a lot of request and response information and the significance like we discussed before. So not only are you able to view this information, you're also able to filter using any of these parameters that you see over here. And how you do that is just click on the parameter that you want to filter. So now that we've entered a filter for client IP, all the transactions that have that particular client IP are initiated from there are listed here. You can also filter using a portion of the URI, or you can even type in the filter bar whatever you want to filter using, and it will prompt you to the various options you have to frame that query. So say suppose you want to say response code less than 400 over here, then all the traffic that adheres to these three filters together appear over here. Let's cancel out of these for a moment now. The next thing that I want you guys to look at is log analytics. So all of these analytics are collected based on the logs that we just saw. We have stuff like top browsers, top devices, top IP addresses that are hitting these VIPs. The important one over here is significance. So significance, as we discussed before, helps you in backtracking issue to cause. So let's just try to click on SSL error as the significance over here. Now this gets added as a filter like we saw previously, and all the transactions that have significance as SSL error load. So once you open up one of them, you see the significance here. It says connection dropped due to SSL handshake failure. So this makes you want to think, okay, maybe the chaining of the certificate is not done properly, or maybe the SSL bundle is not uploaded, or something like that. So it gives you more clues to understand what exactly might be happening. The other tabs over here are events and alerts. Here you get like whip up, whip down alerts, and also like audit logs. This can be viewed here, or it can be channeled to an external syslog server. So this was a very brief demo, and the intention of this was to, of course, show you how you can troubleshoot easily and identify and triage a problem. The health scores as well as the analytic profiles really help you pinpoint which is the affected virtual service and which is the affected transaction even. So as to even without capturing packet captures or anything of that sort, you get a lot of information in the logs itself, which are collected real time in the VIPs.
Okay, thank you, Preeti. Now that we have gone through the demo, want to quickly show the VMware IT journey. The NSX Advanced Load Balancer migration, as I mentioned, based on what our criteria were, what our business requirements and our success criteria, it was a kind of a gradual process we wanted to go through to ensure that we don't really impact our business in any way. So started our journey back in July 2019, followed by doing the pilot for remote sites. Next, we did a greenfield deployments for VMware Cloud on AWS deployment, Horizon 7 deployments, followed by completing our production deployment, and then Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, and the data center migration is in progress. We are looking to complete our deployment for WAF or web application firewalls sometime March this year, which will allow us to complete our end-to-end deployment. So that was kind of our overview. I just want to leave you with these thoughts, right? We had four main drivers when we decided to do this NSX Advanced Load Balancer: the elasticity, which was achieved by a distributed load balancer architecture. The next one was the analytics, where we have a real-time analytics, which allows us to identify any issues very quickly. The automation with the end-to-end integration with Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, we increase our go-to-market, we reduce our go-to-market time very quickly, and the unified load balancers, which allowed us to manage and maintain our on-prem as the public cloud deployment. So, and we were able to achieve all of our requirements at the end of this migration. So that's where we are at. So I'm going to pause here for the questions. We are going to look at the Q&A, but I want to thank you for your time. Hope you found this webinar useful. And let me quickly go through the questions now. So there is the question. I'm just going to quickly read it. It says that I notice in one of the slides you guys have in NASA data center 3 security groups or service engine groups, and each of the SCGs had a separate applications in it. And the question here is that I'm curious what method or consideration went into putting which apps goes into which SEs. Do you split the apps out across the SCGs based on the requirements of the application, or they split based upon more on the how physical load balancers was deployed? So the answer to that question is when we were doing this migration, we want to make sure that we don't make too many changes, and each of the service engine groups have exposes certain networks in our environment. So only certain networks we expose to certain service engine groups, and that's how we split the applications. We don't really want to make too many changes at the time of deployment. So if we have a physical load balancer we are migrating from, we generally do one-to-one migration, which allows us to manage and maintain same network on those service engine groups. So there is the next question there is, does RVLB support L7 features such as application, acceleration, HTTP, caching, compression, signature signing, etc.? Can we use this with NSXV as well? Does this support auto scaling? So let me try to answer these questions. So the L7 feature, some of the L7 features are supported, such as the compression that is supported. Regarding the signature signing or staging, sorry, if you use a web application firewall, it provides you the signature, which allows you to protect yourself from any attacks. This cannot be directly used with the NSXV, or at least we are not using that. And the auto scaling support is in place. Once you integrate with the vSphere, you can enable the auto scaling, which will allow you to scale this load balancer on the fly. So for example, if you have suddenly the load increases, you can configure it where it can automatically scale out on the fly.
Well, that looks like we've answered all the questions. If you do have any more, we can hang around for a minute. Go ahead and put those in the Q&A window. But in the meantime, Swapnil and Preeti, thanks so much for this great presentation. It was really interesting to understand both the process and the technology, to see the demo. And so we really appreciate the preparation you put into this and the time you've given us to present to us today. To all those attending, thank you. And as we mentioned at the beginning, this presentation was recorded and your TAM will make that available to you. And please do join us next month, where we'll be looking at the VMware Cloud Disaster Recovery offering. And we look forward to seeing you for that on February 18th. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.